Today, the North Sea looks empty. But beneath these waters, there was once another world. This is Doggerland. 8,000 years ago, Britain was not an island. Between Britain and mainland Europe stretched a vast green plain. Rivers flowed, forest grew, and people called this place home. Today, that entire world lies beneath the North Sea. Beneath the cold waters of the North Sea lies a world that vanished from human memory. A land where rivers flowed, forest grew, and people once called home. Thousands of years ago, the map of Europe looked completely different. Where ships now cross the North Sea, there was once a vast landscape connecting Britain to mainland Europe. This was Doggerland. But Doggerland was more than just a landscape. It was home. For thousands of years, families lived beside its rivers, hunted its forests, and followed the rhythms of the changing seasons. Before the waves covered it, Doggerland was alive. Its rivers carried fresh water through ancient valleys, its forests sheltered countless animals, and every season brought new opportunities for the people who depended on this forgotten world. For centuries, the North Sea appeared to hide its secrets. But beneath the waves, scientists began to uncover evidence of an ancient landscape, a world preserved in mud, stone, and the memories of the seabed. The evidence was not found in ancient books. It was pulled from the ocean floor. Bones, tools, and traces of life revealed that this forgotten land was once real. The people of Doggerland left behind no written records. But their tools and traces tell a story. They followed rivers, hunted wild animals, gathered food, and adapted to a changing world they knew better than anyone. At the heart of Doggerland were its rivers. They carved paths through the landscape, creating wetlands, forests, and rich hunting grounds. For the people who lived there, these waterways were more than scenery. They were the foundation of survival. Doggerland was a world filled with life. Across its forests and rivers, animals moved through the landscape. Red deer, wild cattle, boar, and countless other creatures. For the people who lived here, this wildlife was not just part of nature. It was the key to survival. Every tool found beneath the North Sea carries a memory of the people who made it. In Doggerland, survival depended on knowledge passed from one generation to the next. They shaped stone, bone, and wood into tools for hunting, fishing, and daily life, building a relationship with a world that would eventually disappear. But the world of Doggerland was beginning to change. After the Ice Age, the climate grew warmer, and the great ice sheets slowly disappear. The seas began to rise, and from plains that had supported generations of people started to become a memory. At first, the changes were easy to ignore. The shoreline moved a little farther each generation, rivers widened, marshes spread, and familiar paths slowly disappeared beneath the rising sea. The people adapted, never imagining that their homeland was quietly slipping away. The land did not vanish in a single day. With every passing generation, the forest grew quieter, the rivers changed their course, and the sea reached a little farther into the world they called home. Still, the people endured, adapting to each new season, unaware that their homeland was slowly slipping beyond their reach. For the people of Doggerland, every river carried a memory. Children learnt the old paths from their parents, and parents had learnt them from those who came before. But with each passing generation, the landmarks began to disappear. The land still looked like home, yet little by little, home was changed something they no longer recognized. By now, Doggerland was no longer the vast world it once had been. The Great Plains had become scattered islands, wetlands, and fragile coastal settlements. The people continued their lives, but the land beneath them was slowly becoming a memory. Then a force from the deep changed the North Sea forever. Far to the north, a massive underwater landslide sent waves racing across the sea. For the people who still called Doggerland home, the ocean had revealed its true power. When the waves finally passed, Doggerland was forever changed. But the story was not over. The remaining lands continued to shrink as the sea slowly claimed the last traces of an ancient world. What was once a home for generations of people became a hidden landscape beneath the North Sea. For thousands of years, Doggerland rested beneath the waves, hidden from human memory. But the lost world was not completely silent. The seabed still held the traces of the people who once lived there. Slowly, fishermen and scientists began uncovering the evidence of a forgotten land. Beneath the North Sea, a forgotten landscape was waiting to be revealed. Using modern technology, scientists began tracing ancient rivers, forests, and valleys hidden beneath the seabed. Slowly, the outline of Doggerland began to return. The seabed held more than the shape of a lost landscape. It held the traces of the people who once walked across its forests, rivers, and plains. Their tools and belongings became the final messages from a world that disappeared beneath the waves. Before the sea covered Doggerland, it was alive with movement. Deer crossed ancient forests, wild cattle moved across open plains, and rivers carried life through the landscape. This was not an empty land. It was a world filled with creatures and with the people who depended on them. Before the sea covered Doggerland, it was alive with movement. Deer crossed ancient forests, wild cattle moved across open plains, and rivers carried life through the landscape. This was not an empty land. It was a world filled with creatures and with the people who depended on them.
This region's fate was written in the changing climate. As the great ice sheets melted, the seas slowly began to rise and reshape the world around its people. A land that had connected communities for thousands of years was becoming a landscape of water.
The land was gone, but its people were not. Generation by generation, families moved to higher ground, carrying their knowledge, their traditions, and their memories into a new world. Doggerland disappeared beneath the sea, but its people lived on.
Even today, the lost land continues to tell its story. Hidden beneath the waves, ancient rivers, forests, and forgotten relics wait to be discovered. Each new discovery brings us one step closer to understanding a world that time almost erased. The lost land is gone, but its story is still being written.
Doggerland was lost beneath the waves, but its story became part of the history of Europe itself. The rivers, forests, and people that once existed there remind us that landscapes change, but the human connection to the land remains. Doggerland is more than a lost landscape. It is a reminder that the world around us is constantly changing. The people who lived there faced a changing environment, just as generations before and after human resilience. The sea took Doggerland from the map. But beneath its waters, it preserved fragments of the world that had once existed there. Ancient landscapes, animal remains, and the tools of forgotten people survived became its keeper. In a strange way, there was no single moment when Doggerland disappeared. Instead, the transformation happened slowly, one generation after another. Coastlines moved, rivers became bays, familiar hunting grounds became islands, and eventually the sea covered almost everything.
But for the people who lived there, this was not history. It was simply the world they knew. They had grown up beside these rivers, perhaps marests, the wetlands, the animal-eat pieces of their old world with them, and the path that knitted one community to another. The landscape was changing, and the people could see it. Places they had known for generations were slowly becoming unreachable. So they began to move, not all at once, but slowly, from one generation to the next, leaving behind places they had always called home.
Some traveled by land, others followed the waterways. And wherever they went, they carried knowledge of the world they had left behind. They knew where food could be found, where animals gathered, and where the safest paths once crossed the land. That knowledge traveled with them. But the old landscape was disappearing behind them, and with every passing generation, fewer people would remember it as land. Eventually, Doggerland became a memory, then a story, and finally, a world hidden beneath the sea. For thousands of years, Doggerland remained hidden beneath the waters of the North Sea. Its rivers were gone from the map, but traces of its existence remained. Then came the clues: stone tools, animal bones, and traces of an ancient landscape, waiting beneath the seabed At first, the discoveries seemed isolated. A single tool, a fragment of bone, a piece of ancient wood. But slowly, the pieces began to form a picture. Scientists began to look beyond the artifacts to the landscape itself. Beneath the seabed, they found the outlines of rivers, valleys, and ancient coastlines. Piece by piece, a forgotten landscape began to emerge. What had once been imagined as empty sea was revealed as a world of rivers, forests, wetlands, and people. But the landscape was only part of the story, because Doggerland was also home. People lived beside its rivers and depended on its forests and wetlands. Water shaped their lives. It provided food, routes for travel, and access to distant places. For them, the rivers were not barriers, they were connections. Their lives followed the seasons. Spring brought new plants and animals. Summer offered longer days for travel and gathering, and as winter approached, the rhythm of life changed again. But the seasons were not the only thing changing. The climate was shifting, and slowly, the balance of their world began to change with it. At first, the changes may have seemed small. A little more water, a little less land. But over generations, the difference became impossible to ignore. Rivers widened, marshes spread, and the familiar landscape began breaking apart until dry ground became islands. For a time, people could still travel between the remaining lands. But each generation found the journey harder. The old connections were disappearing. Eventually, the familiar shores were no longer familiar. The places where people had walked were now beneath the water. And the world they knew was becoming a memory. Generation after generation, the sea claimed more of the land. Until finally, the landscape that had connected people was gone. Yet Doggerland did not vanish completely. Its story remained, hidden in the seabed, waiting for someone to look. Some clues appeared by chance, washed ashore by the sea, or brought up from beneath the seabed. Each discovery offered another glimpse of the world that had been lost. One discovery could be explained away, but hundreds of clues spread across the seabed were harder to ignore. The seabed became a kind of archive, preserving fragments of a landscape that no longer existed. And scientists learnt how to read it. The clues revealed more than where people lived. They also revealed how their climate changed and why the sea kept moving inland. Today, the land is gone, but its shape can still be traced. Beneath the North Sea, an entire prehistoric world is waiting to be remembered.
But the people did not simply disappear. They moved, carrying their skills, memories, and traditions into the lands that remained.
And perhaps that is the most remarkable part. Doggerland disappeared from the map, but the people who lived there did not disappear with it.
Their world changed, their homeland disappeared, but their descendants continued across Europe. And beneath the sea, the evidence still waits.
For centuries, the North Sea seemed to hide nothing but water. But beneath it, an entire human landscape had been waiting. Doggerland reminds us that landscapes are never permanent. The places people call home can change beyond recognition. And sometimes the past survives where we least expect it. How many other lost landscapes are still hidden beneath the world's oceans? And how many stories are still waiting to be found? Today, we sail above it without seeing what lies below. But beneath the waves, the traces of another world remain.
Once, this was not the bottom of a sea. It was home. A place where people lived, worked, and built their lives. And then, the water came. Not in a single moment, but slowly, year after year. Eventually, the last dry paths disappeared. The rivers became sea, and Doggerland became a memory. Yet the story did not end there. Thousands of years later, we began finding the evidence and slowly remembered the land beneath our feet. Every artifact added another clue, and slowly, the hidden shape of Doggerland became clear. Modern technology changed the search. Sonar and seabed mapping allowed scientists to see landscapes hidden beneath the water. From those hidden traces, scientists could rebuild a picture of the lost world. Rivers returned to the map, and Doggerland began to emerge again. But the map revealed something more important. This was not simply a lost landscape. It was a place where people lived.
Then came an unexpected discovery. Ancient DNA revealed that forests were growing here more than 16,000 years ago.
Doggerland did not disappear in a single day. Parts survived the flooding, and some land remained above water for thousands of years.
For generations, people adapted to the shrinking world. The sea moved closer, but life continued on the remaining land.
But the sediments held another surprise. Scientists found DNA from a tree believed to have vanished from this region hundreds of thousands of years earlier. That changed the picture. Doggerland may have been more than a passage between lands. It may have been a refuge in a changing Ice Age world. Scientists expected traces of cold landscapes. Instead, the evidence pointed to woodland, a greener Doggerland than many had imagined.
But there was a problem. Not every layer told the same story. Some traces were local. Others had traveled with the sediment.
But scientists had to be careful. Some DNA was preserved locally, while other traces had traveled downstream. The challenge was separating the signal from everything the river had carried with it. That was where the sediment became crucial. The evidence was not frozen in time. Doggerland itself was changing as climate, vegetation, and water transformed the landscape. The change was happening faster than the landscape could recover. Sea levels were rising, and the habitable land was shrinking. Eventually, the landscape crossed a final threshold. The forests disappeared, and beneath the new waters, seagrass took their place. Even then, Doggerland was not simply gone. Fragments of land survived as the sea continued its slow advance. Doggerland is underwater, but it is not lost. Its forests, animals, and changing landscapes are still speaking through the sediment. Some stories disappear beneath the surface, but they are never truly gone. Subscribe to Unburied Past and uncover what history left behind.